to the Ohio Home Inspector Network podcast. I'm your host today, James Jones. So today we have the pleasure and the privilege of being with Bryan Heyward from Hayward Assurance Group. Bryan, go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers.
Good afternoon. This is Bryan Heyward. I am the president of the Hayward Assurance Group. We are an independent insurance brokerage. We have multiple offices in different states, and happy to be here.
Bryan, let's talk about challenges with homes with odor roofs. What challenges have you seen from the insurance perspective that buyers should look out for?
Okay, so the whole purpose of insurance is to put you back to where you were in the event of a claim. So you can't benefit from a claim and you can't be negatively affected from a claim. Okay, so what's going on now in the insurance industry in regards to roofs? Roofs have a depending on what type of shingle you buy, they have a lifespan. So you might have a 25-year life shingle, a 10-year shingle, a 15-year shingle, etc. So the closer to that shingle's lifespan expiring or going over that lifespan, there will be some challenges in regards to claims. So as I stated earlier, the whole premise of insurance is to put you back to where you were. So if you had for example, you had a 15-year shingle, and you're now in age 17, if there were a claim, the insurance company is not going to give you money for brand new shingles because you actually have a 17-year roof lifespan shingle that was 15 years. So you're beyond the life of the shingle. So they will give you a claim settlement. However, they will depreciate that amount based on the age of your shingles. So, for example, instead of you getting, let's just say, the new roof to get it replaced with the 17-year-old shingles that you have on your home might be $10,000. With the roof schedule, because your age of your roof is past the lifespan, they might give you $8,000, $7,000 instead of the whole $10,000. So there will be some depreciation because, again, they can't. The whole premise of a claim is to put you back to where you were. So they could not give you money for brand new shingles when the shingles on your roof are 17 years old and they're 2 years past the life of the shingle, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And that brings me to my next question. We, as property inspectors, have been putting new disclaimers in our inspection reports, just saying, hey, check with your insurance company. There could be some issues with the condition or the age of the shingle that you might want to assess with the actual insurance provider. But as a property inspector, we have to follow the state standard of practice. So we have to write what deficiencies on the day of the inspection are a deficiency, the deficiency and the degree of the deficiency. We also have to document the age and etc., but we can't deem a roof uninsurable. So what advice would you give to inspectors and buyers? Like, how proactive should they be? What should each individual, the inspector and the buyer, do during the transaction that would help them avoid these pitfalls?
That's a great question, and I believe the buyer, and especially the home inspector, because the buyer might not be privy to roof conditions and what damaged shingles look like. So, for example, if you are looking to purchase a home, and let's just say the roof is already in very bad condition, you have roof shingles that are curling, you have missing shingles, technically that home is uninsurable because the roof already has existing damage and the roof already needs to be replaced. So it's very, very imperative that the home inspector really go over with the buyer the condition of the roof. And then also too, the insurance company, we're going to take a look at the roof as well. And so if the roof is in, very, very bad condition, it possibly could be uninsured. And so, it is very important that the buyer get with the seller to get some type of addendum to the contract to get the roof replaced. Or if that's not possible, now they have some policies that will not give you any coverage for your roof. So if the roof is in such a bad condition, but those policies are few and far between. Most insurance companies would rather decline coverage due to the condition of the roof. So it's very, very important that the buyer, understands the condition of the roof from the home inspection. So when it does get to the insurance company, we can speak to it as to why we can't insure it or why we have to exclude it. But it's very, very important to understand the roof conditions during the home inspection.
So Brian, how do we get here? What in the insurance industry changed? I've had homeowners insurance for 2 decades now. Like these processes are new. What in the industry is different now for homeowners? I mean, what is making insurance companies mitigate their risk in this different way?
Well, a couple different things. But one, I would say, when COVID happened, the world changed. Not only do people not want to go into the office, but the world just changed. Period. So the cost of goods and materials went through the roof. The availability to purchase building materials became few and far between. A lot of times, building materials, auto parts, they were always on back order due to COVID. And then also too, so the price of those building materials have skyrocketed, and also too the cost of labor has skyrocketed by various roofing companies. So with insurance is highly regulated by each state that they are governed in. So whatever state you're in, your state regulates the insurance. So insurance companies can't just charge a rate that they want to charge. They have to submit those rates in advance to the insurance commissioner, and those rates are approved. So what happened was when this inflation just went through the roof overnight, the cost of building materials went through the roof, the cost of labor went through the roof. So what technically used to be on an exactament value, which was the same, data and worksheet that contractors used and insurance companies used to settle claims. So, the exact value would have, for this size roof, it would cost this much in labor and this much in supplies. And it was like uniform, and it was easy for insurance companies to kind of set their rates based on what a potential claim could be for a roof. But now that, inflation is, 3 to 4 times what it used to be, the cost of building materials are 10 times what it used to be, the insurance companies, since they were bound by the rates that were submitted to the state Ohio or whatever state you're in, insurance commissioner, they couldn't change those rates. So when what used to be $5,000 to do a roof then became $15,000. So overnight. So the insurance companies were collecting premium to replace a roof at $5,000 but paying out $15,000. So anybody that's been in business long enough to know that if you're not collecting enough money, you're not going to be able to sustain that business for a long period of time. So right now, just about every insurance company has been losing billions since since COVID, and majority of insurance companies have a combined ratio of 125. So what that means is for every dollar that they bring in, they're paying out $1.25. So if you do the math, there's no way that you can sustain business and be in business if you're taking in $1 and you're paying out $1.25. So, with all of this coming down the pike and now, these body shops and these roofers, they kind of charge what they want to charge. Nobody can really get a grasp on, what the appropriate price to repair a home should be or a roof should be. So that's the crisis that we're in right now, and things just change, overnight. You go to the store. Last month you could go to the store and the eggs was $4. You go to the store this month, now they're $10. So nothing is kind of stable at this point as far as the economy and cost of goods and services. So the insurance companies do not know what to charge. So now we're going to roof schedules. Now we're going to a higher roof deductible. Now some companies are not going to give you replacement costs on your roof. They'll give you the value of the roof as it is right now. So it's a lot of things that are happening right now. And again, the insurance company, when all this stuff had went up, they had already submitted those rates in advance. So they can't just change the rate when everything goes up, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I got a couple of scenarios for you. If a buyer is approved for property insurance and they're moving forward and headed towards the closing table, and then they're derailed for something, maybe the roof or something else, where the coverage is in question, and the insurance provider is now saying that they can't cover the insurance unless full replacement, or maybe after the property inspection and after the closing, they're in the house for a period of time, and the roof has life, but the insurance company is saying, hey, at 12 or 15, this is our policy. And so they maybe send out a third party individual who represents the insurance company. They walk around the house, they take a few pictures, and they report back to the provider, the insurance company, and say, hey, this particular roof is a risk or what have you. What kind of sets that in motion, and what can the buyer do to avoid something like that?
Well, it's very, very important that the buyer always get a home inspection, and you want to keep that handy. All insurance companies are going to hire a third-party company to come out and do an outside inspection. Now, sometimes with these third-party vendors, it could be a situation, and I have seen this before, where the inspector went to the wrong house. They provided inspection to the insurance company saying, hey, XYZ is wrong with this. They got missing shingles. They got missing siding. And, come to find out, it was the wrong property.
Wow.
So it happens, you know what I mean? Because so if you have that home inspection handy, then we can always send that home inspection, prior to you closing to underwriting and say, hey, can you double check that inspection report that you received from that third party vendor? Inaccurate. They can look at the pictures that third party vendor provided, look at the report and pictures from you guys, and they can say, oh, okay, well, looks like this third party vendor was wrong. We'll take the home inspector's report because he was actually there. So it's very, very important that the buyer, get a home inspection and keep that information. And then also too, on high value houses, or you could have a situation whereas to, the previous owner had a number of claims. So all insurance companies, they share a database with claims. So those claims, even though the new buyer of the house has not lived in that property, the current owner of that property that's selling it to the buyer, they could have had a number of claims. And so it will come up on the report that those claims aren't registered to the new buyer, but they are registered to that property address. So now insurance companies are saying, hey, can you send us the home inspection to make sure that stuff is taken care of? Because some insurance companies, without a home inspection with claims on that address from a prior owner, will decline coverage without a home inspection because they want to make sure that stuff is taken care of, if that makes sense. So it's very important that they get a home inspection.
That makes perfect sense. That's great insight, Brian. Very informative. So to wrap things up, when an individual home buyer per se is purchasing a home, what advice do you have for them? And also on the flip side, for property inspectors, what advice do you have for the property inspectors of improving their job to make sure that we don't fall in that small window that says, hey, we're property inspectors, we don't work for the insurance company. Right. We can't deem a roof uninsurable, so we need to do our due diligence in our standard of practice and how we perform our inspection. So what advice do you have for those two sides, the home buyer and the property inspector?
Well, for the home buyer, before you are looking to, make an offer on the home, I would say it's very important that you get with your realtor to try to get as much information about the home as possible. See if you can, before you make an offer, if you can ask, if your realtor can ask the seller's realtor, do they know the age of the roof? When's the last time they updated their HVAC? When you're out there, looking at the property, don't be so, thrilled to look at, the inside of the property. Take an outside inspection, see if there's any cracks in the concrete, see if there's any missing shingles, see if you don't have to be a roofing expert to see if it's one or two shingles missing. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a roofing expert to see that, the roof looks kind of old. You know what I mean? So it's very, very important that before you make a contract or you make an offer on the property, kind of do your own due diligence so you can kind of know what's going on. And then, very, very important that you get a home inspection. And it's very, very important that the home inspector be diligent. So, what I have seen in the past is, we're all, friendly people. And, a lot of times home inspectors, and people in general, I don't even want to just say a home inspector, but a lot of times you could do a walkthrough with somebody and you got a good rapport with somebody, and you're talking to that person and learning their story, and they're learning about you. And sometimes, just in the midst of the conversation and the fellowship, as a home inspector, you can miss some things. So, if I was in a home inspecting business, I would most likely, tell my clients that, hey, I would need you to meet me the last 30 minutes of the home inspection. And then I would, if I was a home inspector, I would probably try to go do a lot of this stuff by myself, and then, we could do another walkthrough with the client. So I'd make sure that I didn't miss anything if I was a home inspector. But I'm not a home inspector. That's just from the outside looking in what I would do if I was in home inspection, because it's very, very important that you don't miss anything, because you do a huge disservice to the client, because once if those items or those deficiencies are not outlined and the buyer doesn't understand what they're getting, when they sign on the dotted line, it's now their problem and not the seller's problem. And then those going to have ramifications where they can't, if they are able to get insurance in the beginning, if those deficiencies weren't taken care of, they'll be canceled in the first 30 days. So they might not be able to get home insurance again, and then they get forced placed insurance, and then the mortgage company has problems. So it's very, very important that the home inspector do a diligent job in making sure that everything that needs to be addressed is addressed. And then it's very important for the buyer, before they get into the home buying process, just ask some questions. When was the last time the roof was replaced? When was the last time the HVAC was replaced? Do you know if there's any problems that you had? Just kind of on the outside, and just do a visual outside inspection, if that makes sense, before you enter into a purchase contract.
Well, Brian, I think the homeowners, inspectors are going to really benefit from your invaluable insight. Thank you for coming on the Ohio Home Inspector Podcast, Inspector Talk. We're going to have to follow this up with another episode. This is a lot of good information, man. It's definitely going to help home inspectors and buyers. This was great, Brian. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you.